Let us pray. We give thanks to God for the rich heritage of this province as found in our people. We pray that native-born Albertans and those who have come from other places may continue to work together to preserve and enlarge the precious heritage called Alberta. Amen.
Introduction of visitors.
Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce to you today and through you to the members of the Assembly a group of visitors from the Parliament of the Republic of Yemen. We have accompanying us today Dr. Yassin Saeed Noman, President of the Council of Deputies, and to my colleagues here that means Speaker of the Assembly. Mr. Alawi Hassan Latas, Member of Parliament. Mr. Ahmed Esmail Abu Hureen, Member of Parliament. Mr. Ahmed Abed Shari, Member of Parliament. Mr. Nabjib Katan Shabi, Member of Parliament. Mr. Abdil Jabbar Lasafani, Member of Parliament. His Excellency Mohammed Saeed Ali, the Ambassador of the Republic of Yemen. Mr. Speaker, we're indeed very pleased to host this delegation in Alberta. Their visit coincides with a recent visit by an Alberta delegation to the Yemen headed by the Honourable Rick Orman. Alberta places high value on our steadily increasing relations with the Republic of Yemen, and we want to continue our excellent cooperation for the mutual benefits of both parties. I would ask Dr. Noman and his delegation to now rise in your gallery and receive the warm welcome of the members of the Assembly.
Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions.
Introduction of bill.
Notices of motion. Member for Calgary Bow.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to give oral notice under Standing Order 40 that after question period I will be seeking unanimous support to consider the following motion. Be it resolved that, recognizing the devastating effect of child sexual abuse, the Legislative Assembly show its support for the Break the Cycle tour, which began today in St. John's, Newfoundland. Thank you.
Introduction of bills. Tabling returns and reports.
Minister of Economic Development and Trade.
My pleasure, sir, to file with you 4 copies of the press release plus copies of the inputs that we've received through our public forums and the Banff School dealing with the Towards 2000 Together process.
Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased today, on behalf of the government and the Premier, who is attending the Western Premiers Conference near Williams Lake, British Columbia, to file with the Assembly today a document entitled Improving Efficiency and Accountability, Rebalancing Federal-Provincial Spending Responsibilities.
Edmonton Jasper Place.
Chair, I wish to file copies of a letter which I've sent to you, sir, as the Chairman of the Member Services Committee, asking that before the order is cast on the out-of-town per diem for people within a 100-kilometer radius, that it be amended to clarify that receipts are required so that the confusion in the mind of the Liberal leader can be eased.
I deem it appropriate that I ask the honourable member when the correspondence was sent to my office because I'm not aware of it.
It's stamped on the letter. It was approximately 2:20 this afternoon.
Thank you.
Introduction of special guests.
Honourable the Deputy Premier, followed by the member for Calgary Bow.
I hope, Mr. Speaker, that the Forum for Young Albertans are in the gallery. If they are, I would like to welcome 35 senior high students from around the province who are in the gallery as part of the Forum for Young Albertans program. These students are participating in a unique, non-partisan program which gives them exposure to the people and processes of different levels of government, the major political parties, the judiciary, the media, as well as business and labor, as just some examples. They are accompanied by Team Forum, Blair Stoltz, who many members will recall was a page in this assembly, and the youngest alderman elected in Medicine Hat, as an editorial note, in the province, in the city of Medicine Hat. Program Assistant Executive Director, and Annette Plassen, Amy Hansen, Richard Fix, and Paul Corbiere. These students have spent a considerable amount of time this week discussing and prioritizing their own views on the Constitution. They also prepared presentations to celebrate and encourage national unity. And tomorrow they will be debating two motions raised in private government members' hour in a mock parliamentary debate. This evening they will be having dinner with their respective MLAs, and I would ask all members of the Assembly to join me in welcoming them to this Assembly.
Calgary Bow.
Speaker, Margaret Johnson and Teresa Werinski are the Edmonton co-chairs of Break the Cycle Tour, which starts today in Newfoundland, and the tour is expected to pass through Edmonton on August the 22nd. They are seated in the members' gallery. I would like to ask them to stand and receive the warm welcome of this Assembly.
Additionally, the Deputy Premier, followed by Edmonton Calder.
But the Crestwood School students are here from Medicine Hat. We are pleased today to have 80 visitors from Crestwood School in Medicine Hat. Some are seated in the members' gallery and some in the public gallery. They are accompanied by their teachers, Mr. David George, Mrs. Bev Slater, Mrs. Leanne Bieberdorf, Mr. Wade Lawson, Mr. Doug LaMarche, and by parents, Mrs. Wendy Smith, Mrs. Marilyn Siegmund, Mrs. Lynn Brower, Mrs. Dixie Lee, Mrs. Deanne Wise, Mrs. Devona Voller, and by bus drivers Jack Wenham and Ivan Jesse. And once again, it's a privilege for me to welcome these students. Crestwood School has been diligent in ensuring that their students have an opportunity to visit this Assembly and to see it in action. I'm very pleased to welcome Medicine Hat visitors here, and I'd ask my colleagues to give them a very warm welcome as they rise to be acknowledged.
Edmonton Calder.
Mr. Speaker, it is my pleasure today to introduce a group of students from St. Angela's School to you and to members of the Assembly. They are 38 in number. They are accompanied by their teachers, Miss Donna Sages, Miss Anique Champagne, and parents, Mrs. Lisa DeShane and Mr. Eric Bodner. They are seated in the public gallery, and I would ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of the members.
His Excellency in the gallery, please. You can read it while you're here.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Member Services Committee referred the matter of an independent review of MLA remuneration and allowances to a subcommittee which would establish the review's scope, composition, and mandate, Mr. Speaker. That is what we have been pushing for in the official opposition for years.
Hear, hear.
But, Mr. Speaker, sadly, the Conservative majority on the committee will have refused to set a time limit on when this subcommittee will report. Mr. Speaker, this looks like a government tactic to delay consideration of this important issue. My question to the Deputy Premier is this: will the Deputy Premier assure this House that the subcommittee will report within 30 days so the business of the review can proceed as quickly as possible?
Good point.
Mr.
Speaker, it's not really in the government's purview to direct the operations of a committee of the Legislative Assembly, which is established by a vote of this Assembly earlier on during the course of its proceedings. I'm rather puzzled by the honourable leaders referring it to the government as for us as a government to direct the outcome of that particular committee's deliberations.
This was directly a response from the Premier of the province to the letter that he tabled in here the other day. And it was a direct response from the Premier when he asked the Member Services Committee to look into it. So don't hand us that, Mr. Speaker. And as the Deputy Premier, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask him again. Then why, because of a lack of an answer on that, why is the government stalling on this issue? Why don't they get on with it, Mr. Speaker, and do it within 30 days, and let's get on with it, and we'll all be under this, from under this cloud, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I just have to repeat the answer I gave earlier. This is a matter for a legislative committee established by, as I recall, a unanimous vote of this Assembly to deal with issues of this nature, and I do not believe that it's proper for the government to direct the outcome of those deliberations.
If it wasn't proper, why did the Premier direct them to do it in the first place, Mr. Speaker? And the government now to hide behind the Member Services Committee is ludicrous, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you'll sit down, you'll get the question. Yes, Mr. Speaker. I can understand them being nervous, but if you don't want to answer the questions, you have that right. But listen to the question, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.
My question.
Order. Quite appropriately, the government cannot answer on behalf of the whole committee, and that's why the chair has been allowing the questions continued, and the fact that perhaps some discussion could be made with government members of the committee, but the government certainly cannot direct what happens to a whole committee. Or final supplementary.
Make then a special request, at the very least from the Deputy Premier, to the Member Services Committee to at least do this: require all MLAs surrounding Edmonton who claim the capital city allowance to submit receipts. Can he make that request at least?
Good idea.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I rose when the Leader of the Opposition asked the question to answer it, but he's now asked two questions, and that makes four as I count them up that he's asked during the course of this particular line of questioning. But, Mr. Speaker, I would certainly check the record, but it was my understanding that the vote which was made on the motion in Member Services Committee was supported by all members present and voting, and in any event, it's the work of that committee to carry out its responsibilities, and it is my view that as Deputy Premier or as the Premier, that it is not up to us as the government to direct the work of a special committee of this Assembly established, as it has been every year since I've been in this House, under the rules, and as this year, as I recall, was adopted by unanimous consent of the members of this Assembly, and that's the proper way of handling these matters.
Right.
Second main question, Leader of the Opposition. Second main.
You may think that's a cute answer, but the people of Alberta know full well,
That's
Mr.
right.
Speaker, where that's coming from. Shame on you. Mr. Speaker, my question, I'd like to designate my second question, a member from Calgary Mountain View.
Take that outside and have somebody else deliver it. Thank you.
Shame on you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Please. It's not a playground. Calgary Mountain View, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The two promoters of the Canmore Golf Resort were previously senior officers of the Northland Bank and one of its subsidiary companies. When Northlands failed, losing hundreds of millions of dollars, it was in large part because of questionable real estate deals. Mr. Justice Willard Esty, in his inquiry into the failure of Northlands, was especially critical of the actions of the subsidiary company Epicon Properties, Inc., of which one of the principals was executive Vice President. Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of the Environment, was he aware of the business track record of these two principals of the Canmore Golf Resort at the time the decision was made to exempt this project from an NRCB review?
First of all, Mr. Speaker, there was no decision to exempt this project from the NRCB because the NRCB simply wasn't in existence when this project was approved. This project, the planning, the zoning, all of which is the responsibility of the town of Canmore, was approved between 1986, I believe, and 1989, long before I was in this legislative assembly. Relative to the NRCB ruling on the business practices of proponents, that is not their responsibility. The NRCB has been set up to look into the social, the economic, and the environmental impacts of the project. Now, with respect to one of the proponents, I know Mr. Walker very well, as the honourable member has pointed out on many occasions. He's the president of my constituency association. I would like to say, Mr. Speaker, that this particular individual has been highly successful in a number of business ventures, which is a lot more than I can say for the honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, I haven't lost hundreds of millions of dollars of money either. Mr. Speaker, the minister could have submitted the project if he had wanted to, but it has to be remembered that this Canmore Golf Resort is still a highly speculative proposal. All the promoters really have done to this point is get an option on public lands. They haven't even bought the property outright. Given that the resort is proposed to be built on lands that might be purchased or leased from this government, wouldn't the minister agree the only way to ensure that there are no hidden dangers or conflicts of interest is to insist upon a full review by an impartial body like the NRCB?
When the proponents proceed with phase 2 of this project, if and when they do, then of course that phase will be subject to a hearing before the NRCB. If an environmental impact assessment is ordered, then I'm sure that one would be ordered considering the magnitude of the project. The simple fact is, Mr. Speaker, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'll probably have to say it again because the honourable member obviously doesn't understand that the proponents played by all the rules of the day.
Yeah, right,
Well,
no rules.
Let's point it out, Mr. Speaker, that this government has a lot riding on this project, and there's nothing more to it at this point than faith in the ability of those two promoters. Won't the minister agree that given all of these circumstances, it would only be prudent to move carefully and take all the steps necessary to ensure the right things are done before committing totally to this project?
Hear, hear.
Well, Mr. Speaker, first of all, the NRCB, as I pointed out, does not do an examination of the individuals promoting a particular project. If they did, they would find that Mr. Walker in particular has a very, very good track record overall in his business dealings. Mr. Speaker, I can only repeat what I've said before, and I promise to repeat it again because he brought up the point again, is that they played by all the rules of the day. What more can be asked of an honest, committed promoter?
Edmonton Goldbar.
Mr. Speaker, today's figures from Statistics Canada show that over 10% of Alberta families, well over 10,000, are living in poverty, and that Alberta comes in 4th in the national average in incidence after Manitoba, Quebec, and Newfoundland. That's a staggering number of people in our province. My questions, Mr. Speaker, are to the Chairman of the Premier's Council in Support of Families. I'd like to ask the Chairman, does the Council have a plan to deal with and to ease the problems of families in poverty in Alberta, especially where children are involved?
I appreciate the question and the concern, Mr. Speaker, and I can assure the member that this is one of the areas that the Council has received significant input on.
The council right at this time, as a matter of fact, is involved in putting together a report of the consultation done in communities across the province, and at that time the member will see a number of suggested ways in which we're suggesting strategies that this be approached.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't really give us much of a sense of immediacy or the urgency of this situation for many families. Mr. Speaker, another question to the chairman. Will the chairman undertake immediately to act on the proposals? Let's not wait for the committee to come forth with its report. Will you act immediately on the proposals that came from the recent Alberta Teachers Association conference on children and poverty?
Well, Mr. Speaker, those are among proposals that we look at. I have to say that as the chairman of that council, I can't presume to take action unilaterally myself. These things have to come before the members of the council, who are citizens representing a broad spectrum of families in Alberta, and we are doing that, and these things will be coming forth, and I'd be happy to pass them on to the member when they do.
Mr. Speaker, that's not much comfort to the 10% of people who are living in very difficult and tragic circumstances. Will the chairman tell this House how he plans to use the principles that he's enunciated in the family grid to insist, in fact demand, that Cabinet address the tragic situation?
I'm happy to report, Mr. Speaker, that very recently there was a meeting with all deputy ministers of departments, most of whom were in attendance, in which the family policy grid was discussed and also how it will be implemented. 3 departments have already piloted the use of the family policy grid to see how to determine their own policies, programs, and legislation. So that is already underway. Now all departments are involved in full implementation of the family policy grid to look at their policies, to see how these policies affect Alberta families regardless of their income.
Now, the unusual circumstance, Red Deer North, I ask a question.
What?
You asked
a question.
Oh, yeah, my question.
Having gone, I realize
Well, the chair doesn't usually offer me such liberties to continue speaking, and I do indeed have a question to the Deputy Premier. I'd like to know, regarding the discussions on the Constitution, unfortunately, there's a perception that the constitutional discussions do get shadowed by somewhat of a veil of secrecy from time to time, and even though there's been efforts to make these as public as possible, we're concerned, and we hear suggestions that some decisions, in fact, have already been made, possibly without full public knowledge. The Deputy Premier has been there, has been fully involved. Can you please give us your view on this as an Albertan and as representing Alberta?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the process is rather complicated and difficult, and I won't go through the whole set of circumstances surrounding them, except this. It is absolutely clear from our perspective that no decisions have been made by this group of ministers who are now meeting to discuss the Constitution, along with representatives from the territorial governments and the Aboriginal groups. It is not a decision-making body. It was never intended to make decisions. What it was asked to do, and is in the process of doing, is to try and formulate reasonable positions on various issues to put together in a full package called the Canada Round, which would then be taken to a First Minister's process, and from there back to legislatures and to Parliament, and in the case of Alberta, to a referendum by which all Albertans would be asked to decide. So I want to make it clear that the use of the words decided, decisions, agreement having been arrived at on any of the elements is misleading and unfortunate, because no decisions have been made in the process and will not be made, in Alberta at least, until it is the people who make the final decision.
we're pleased to get that assurance. The flip side of that, Mr. Speaker, is that as long as decisions are going unmade, there's a degree of instability on the national scene. That, of course, has an effect in terms of investment and all kinds of other considerations. Could the Deputy Premier please give us an idea? There's been discussion of a May deadline or end of May deadline for Canadians to be informed of just the status of the discussions. Is that realistic at this point?
Well, that's a major challenge that all of us who've been in the meetings have been struggling with. In the process which was agreed to back in March, it was agreed that there would be actually 18 meeting days when we would be considering these issues. And all participants are working very hard. There's no question about that. We've now finished 10 of those 18 days, and we're still struggling, quite frankly, with the fact that Quebec is not a participant in the discussions. We are going to Montreal next week. I have made arrangements for a meeting with the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs there. We will continue to press Quebec to come back to the table. But if at the end of this process, and Quebec is not part of the table until there is a so-called offer to Quebec arrived at by the rest of Canada, and then we have to start all over again, I would think that the prospect of arriving at an agreement that Canadians could consider for a total package in the Canada round, including Quebec's concerns, Senate reform, Aboriginal issues, the division of responsibilities, those key elements, if they're not all together in the package and agreed to by all governments and the Aboriginal groups, the end of May would be a very, very difficult target. And I have real concerns about making predictions, but perhaps the work of this particular group will be concluded by then. But certainly I do not believe that a final package will be agreed to involving Quebec in the process by that date. That would be, I believe, impossible to achieve, but we will, as a group, continue our work towards that goal.
Followed by Edmonton Meadowlark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no question that my riding of Edmonton Centre has the most and some of the finest restaurants than any other riding in all of Alberta, Mr. Speaker. Of course, there's the fine dining at Claude's or Normand's, the delicious Vietnamese, Greek, and Italian restaurants. Even the cafeteria at the YW, Mr. Speaker, offers something for every palate and every price range, and show the great value of hundreds of hard-working, risk-taking small business people in Alberta. But one thing that my constituents and restaurateurs, Mr. Speaker, cannot stomach is the fact that Vencap Equities of Alberta, with over $200 million from the Heritage Savings Trust Fund, has decided to back a Texas steakhouse chain called Western Sizzling with an unfair investment of over $2 million, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister of Economic Development and Trade, given that Vencap's mandate is to promote economic diversification by providing venture capital to newly emerging companies, how can the Minister possibly justify Vencap's investment in an established U.S.-based restaurant chain which is simply going to take business away from my constituents and restaurateurs throughout Alberta?
Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member is aware, Vencap is a publicly traded company, and they do have, and we acknowledge, some substantial support from the provincial government. This support was established some many years ago. They have their own board of directors, which the administration responds to, and those decisions are totally independent of any action that this government might involve itself in. So I would suggest the honourable member inquire with Vencap.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Alberta who are watching know that Vencap has over $200 million from the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. And I want to ask you, I remember a throne speech which talked about the stewardship of Alberta's resources and concerns about the rates of return to the trust fund. The minister in this government has any concerns about the trust fund and the $200 million, which is now a very sour deal for the province's taxpayers. And given that the last fall, the Standing Committee on the Trust Fund unanimously approved resolutions to call for a significant portion of Vencap investments to be returned to the Trust Fund, when is the minister going to act on these recommendations and stop trying to give unfair advantage to U.S.-based restaurant chains?
Mr. Mr. Speaker, let me again reinforce with the honourable member that VENCAP is a totally independent organization answering to the Alberta population at large. We do acknowledge that they do have funding, secured funding, which does pay a return to the Alberta government, and they are also involved in the diversification. I do acknowledge and also salute, as the honourable member has done, the outstanding restaurants that are throughout the entire city of Edmonton, not only within his own individual constituency. But I would suggest to the honourable member that, as the provincial treasurer said some time ago, we are presently examining the recommendations that have come forward from the Heritage Trust Fund Committee, and at the appropriate time we're more than happy to respond to them.
Captain Meadowlark. Mr. Speaker, in what is literally an unprecedented initiative, the Minister of Forest, Lands and Wildlife is going after 3 environmental groups for court costs arising from a case in which they challenged the government unsuccessfully over its forestry policy. To the Attorney General, will the Attorney General please tell the Minister of Forest, Lands and Wildlife that it is highly unusual for government to undertake a case of this nature against groups which were acting only out of concern for the public interest and with no possibility of personal gain.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member has obviously told the Minister of Forestry that directly across the House.
I didn't hear this. Oh. To the Minister of the Environment, could the Minister of the Environment please explain why he has chosen not to pursue similar action against in similar cases that have involved his department, and whether in fact he has taken up his reasoning with the Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife?
Mr. Speaker, if the honourable member could be more specific, maybe I'll attempt to provide him with an answer.
Little Bow. Sorry, honourable member, it's finished. Member for Little Bow.
Mr. Speaker, it appears Captain Palliser is again revisiting southern Alberta and parts of northeastern Alberta. Many farmers, Mr. Speaker, have quit seeding this spring already due to the present drought and wind conditions, and thousands of acres have been seeded into dry, parched soils anticipating germination moisture, which hasn't shown up. DAs and the MDs of Willow Creek, Pincher Creek, and the County of Lethbridge are advising farmers to halt seeding operations until such time as adequate moisture has arrived from the heavens above. And my question, Mr. Speaker, should these conditions persist, would the Associate Minister of Agriculture undertake to closely monitor these adverse conditions and work with all the DAs and the farm producers to make their decisions in a timely and effective manner so that any shortcomings may not have a detrimental effect on these producers?
Good question.
Well, Mr. Speaker, certainly there is a serious situation in parts of southern Alberta and indeed isolated parts of the province in lack of adequate spring moisture. Our district agriculturalists and our service boards work very closely with producers in these situations, and in some cases are making recommendations not to seed at this time. The concern certainly from the producers rests with crop insurance and the revenue insurance program, and the fact that the program applies only if they seed, and I know that that is a concern to producers. I would say that there are 5 weeks left till June the 20th, which is the seeding deadline. I encourage producers, we encourage producers certainly to continue to work with our people in the field and to make management decisions that are in the best interests of their land and the conservation of that land.
Mr. Speaker, the supplementary is also to the Associate Minister of Agriculture. Alberta Hail and Crop Insurance and GRIP do have certain requirements that the producers have to meet in order to fulfill their insurance obligations. And one of them, on a little bit of a humorous note, Mr. Speaker, that I'm asked when I go back home is to have my friend here from Athabasca come down and do a bit of a rain dance.
Yeah.
Part of it's in jest, but a lot of it, they'll take anything they can get.
He's a good dancer.
However, in terms of success, I'm sorry. Crop varieties and acres seeded will be substantially changed, Mr. Speaker, if these present conditions remain upon us. And given the 5 weeks that they have left, no doubt if it remains dry, they will change. This may not only be problematic for those...
Honourable member. Please, take your place, please. I don't want to do a little dance up here, but I really need to have a question right now, please.
Would the minister, the associate minister, given that irrigation waters may be curtailed, work with the people that are involved to make sure that any costs are minimized that they may lose due to these changing cropping practices and lack of water?
Well, Mr. Speaker, coincidentally, as we're doing pretty well on a daily basis right now, I was reading the water supply report that we get in. I should say we have a standing committee in the Department of Agriculture, a standing drought committee that monitors this at all times and works very closely with Alberta Environment. The encouraging thing at this point is that the water reservoirs, both the hydroelectric and the irrigation reservoirs, the major irrigation reservoirs to the main, are in a normal supply at this time. But I should say that we are working closely with the people in the irrigation districts and monitoring this situation and keeping them apprised of it as we go along. And certainly we'll continue to do that as the spring progresses.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I raised questions about the need to raise the income threshold for people so that they don't have to pay health care premiums when they're already living in poverty. The minister, I think, didn't really take the point. I'd like to just quote from a recent report from the National Council on Welfare, one line. They say, Albertans of modest income pay the same flat rate as millionaires. And maybe that will drive the point home, Mr. Speaker. Poor people can't afford to pay health care premiums. Knowing, Mr. Speaker, that 10% of Albertans are in poverty, what more will it take for the minister to agree to raise the income threshold so that poor people, the working poor, don't have to pay health care premiums?
Right on.
Mr. Speaker, we do have a premium subsidy and a premium non-payment groups of Albertans in this province. I understood the point of the member perfectly well yesterday when she raised it. But the judgment I made, and the judgment I recommended in my estimates the other night, was that because the increase in premium was relatively small this year in order to keep at the 50% threshold for costs, I made the decision and recommended to our caucus and our cabinet that we make adjustments in health rather than adjustments in the premiums. I fully accept the honourable member's point of view that the premiums need to be reviewed. That won't occur in this fiscal year because of other fiscal priorities.
Mr. Speaker, you have to be desperately poor to get premium waiving in this province. $3,500 a year is the income threshold. Do you know how poor you are at $3,500 a year, Mr. Speaker? My question to the minister is this. If she doesn't want to review premiums, I don't care. Will she please commit to reviewing the income threshold for poor people so at $3,500 a year, $3,501 a year, they have to pay health care premiums?
I'm perfectly prepared to review the premium levels, Mr. Speaker. It's simply that in this fiscal year, there were other health priorities. I stand by the decisions that were made to recommend the expenditure of the $4 billion in health in this province, and there won't be an adjustment in this fiscal year.
Edmonton Beverly, followed by Edmonton Whitemud.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On May 7th, I asked the Solicitor General if he would meet with some of the staff of the Belmont Correctional Center so that he might get first-hand information on the problems staff perceive that exist in that facility. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the Solicitor General has refused that request to meet with the staff members personally. Given the unfair practice that management at the centre has alleged to that is one of the major problems there, will the Solicitor General now agree to meet with Belmont Correctional Centre staff and not relegate or delegate the responsibility in this matter to management, who in fact have a conflict of interest?
Mr. Speaker, on May the 7th, I did answer your question, and I did indicate on that day that the staff of the Solicitor General's Department meets on an ongoing basis with all of our personnel in corrections. If there's a need there, or if there's an ongoing discussion out there at the present time, we'll certainly be willing to meet with them. I did not commit personally to meet with them because as we have 16 facilities across the province, I have a very competent staff in the Solicitor General's Department that meet with these people on an ongoing basis.
But there's a conflict there, Mr. Speaker. Unfair staffing practice by management is not the only problem. Other problems including inadequate training of temporary staff, wasteful use of defined option workers that makes a mockery of the program, Mr. Speaker, and the dispensing of drugs by poorly or untrained medical staff is unmedically trained. Mr. Speaker, will the Solicitor General agree to hold a comprehensive public review into the problems at Belmont Centre before morale and safety deteriorates to even a more dangerous level?
Good question. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member has brought forth some strong allegations which I believe are unfounded. I don't know what the basis... I don't know what the basis of these allegations are, but I certainly will have, as I said before, our staff look into these. The Belmont Centre, as I pointed out before, is a correctional house that provides provincial inmates who have received minimum classification re-entry direction into our society. And I believe that they are doing the best job they can under difficult situations. We know that in the criminal justice system and in corrections that we are certainly loaded right to the hilt with individuals that have accessed the criminal justice system. I had today brought to me some stats that show that in one way or the other, 17,000 Albertans right today are on some form of entrance into the criminal justice system on a daily basis. And I might say that bring forth specifics as you've done, but back them up, because I am going to have the staff of the Solicitor General's Department ensure that what you have just alleged here is true, and if it isn't, I will bring it to this Assembly.
Order. Order, please. Order, please. Edmonton Whiteman.
Mr. Speaker, we've obtained a leaked document entitled Proposed Fee for Service that appears to be a $400,000 money grab by the Department of Occupational Health and Safety. And what makes it so interesting, Mr. Speaker, is that it's entitled a proposed fee for service, yet the revenue is already incorporated into this year's revenues in the budget. My question is to the Minister of Health, in that it's the people that she represents in her portfolio that are affected, in that it applies to radiation equipment. Has the Minister of Health consulted with those people in the healthcare field, that will feel the pinch of this additional registration fee that is now going to be imposed on them? Or
Ralph is acting. Refer the question to the Acting Minister of Occupational Health. Before I do, Mr. Speaker, the question with respect to certification of equipment within a hospital is done through other agencies than the Health Department.
Notice, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised that when these documents, these proposals, these draft proposals, and Minister of Culture should pay particular attention to this, that are supposedly draft, incorporated in the budget that there's no consultation between members here to the Minister of Health. Will you in fact agree to consult with the Minister of Occupational Health and Safety so that your people that you represent in the healthcare field are aware of the implications to them?
Mr. Speaker, I am prepared to consult with the Minister of Occupational Health. I'd be more than happy to do that, but the honourable member does not understand the way the certification and the operation of health care services work. And, but I would be happy to work with the Minister of Occupational Health to pass the question on to him.
Is the honourable member willing to table documents so maybe some people know what he's talking about as well? Calgary Glenmore. Calgary Glenmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Economic Development and Trade today tabled a report updating this Assembly on the Towards 2000 initiatives. There have been many groups who have participated in this Towards 2000 initiative. There are big businesses, small businesses, educators, industry associations, and so on. And they have great expectations as to the outcome of this report. Now, Albertans are really concerned about jobs and the lack of jobs, and with the unemployment crisis, they're looking for this government for direction in our economic future. Could the Minister of Development, Economic and Trade give this Assembly what the outcome of this report will initiate and create for these people?
Mr. Speaker, it's a common theme that we share as the government as it relates to job creation within this province, and that is why we have been so proactive in making sure that our economy remains strong. If one examines the record as it relates to job creation, in excess of some 120,000 jobs have been created within this province since 1985. Last year alone, we saw the creation of an additional 14,000+ jobs. Our budget, which just was recently introduced, projects an additional 15,000 jobs to be created within the province. But just dealing with the papers themselves that I tabled, and let me salute the broad public input that we have received in that, and leave the individuals who have participated the assurance that we are going to make sure that their valuable input is recognized as we do draft a new economic strategy for the province of Alberta. We have distributed in excess of 20,000 discussion papers. We have received in excess of 3,400 responses by way of the questionnaire. We've had our 6 regional public forums whereby there have been hundreds of participants. In addition, the Banff School has conducted their roundtables, and in addition to that, we have had separate groups conduct their own analysis and offer us their advice. We are, as the honourable member is aware, having our conference on the economy on the 28th and 29th, which the Premier is chairing in Calgary, and from that we are going to put together a white draft economic strategy for this province so that we can continue to be forceful as it relates to the strengths that we enjoy, but we're not going to conclude at that time. We recognize that the process is fluid and that we have to be proactive and reactive to the situations because we are within a global community. But we are going to take into full account all the excellent submissions that we have received.
Mr. Speaker, people are looking forward to the Premier's conference at the end of this month on our economy. But time is marching on, and could the Minister outline what type of time frame there will be from the Premier's conference to the final commitment that this government will be making following up the presenters?
We're looking to having the white paper draft this fall, Mr. Speaker, and let me indicate to the honourable member too that during this process we are not operating in a vacuum. We have been very proactive in making sure that our economy maintains the strength that we presently enjoy. One only has to refer again to the recent provincial budget whereby we did reduce taxation for the individual on a personal level, plus for those in the manufacturing and processing sector within the province. Plus we came forward with our Western Economic Partnership Agreements which have 8 components so that we can continue on with those strong economic thrusts creating jobs within this province.
In Kingsway.
Here, my first question is to the Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs. Brian Mulroney and Michael Wilson have been saying that we don't need to pay any attention to the North American free trade talks because, after all, only 1% of our trade is with Mexico. Well, Mr. Speaker, it is a big deal. That is, the talks are a big deal because the United States is using those talks to get concessions from Canada that they couldn't get in the last round.
That's right.
So given this fact, will the minister tell the Mulroney government that we will not agree to the North American Free Trade deal until there's been a broad public debate? We don't want the fast track.
The member for Edmonton Kingsway is confused a little bit, I think, on this issue because it is the term fast track is the system which is used in the United States Congress to move matters through in terms of international treaties. The process in the Canadian Parliament, of course, requires debate there if there's any legislation which arises from these issues. I should point out to the honourable member, however, that during the last few days there was a conference call which I participated in on behalf of Alberta and all governments in Canada from the various provinces and the federal government, bringing us up to date on the steps being undertaken relative to the negotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement involving Mexico, Canada, and the United States. I think the honourable member's preamble is somewhat misleading because it has been made very clear by the Government of Canada and by the provinces who are participating in these discussions that the United States is not going to obtain concessions from Canada through this process that they did not achieve in the previous round. There's no intention on the part of governments in this country to see that occur, and all governments have made that point, including this government.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the leaked document is the only information we've had, and it indicates clearly that the federal government, the government has not put forward any good information. We have to have leaked documents before we know what's going on in the free trade talks. The United States government is bullying us in such areas as financial services, intellectual property, quota tariffication, and transportation services, to name but a few. And it's their intention to gain what they couldn't get last time around, and the North American Free Trade talks or agreement will supersede the American Free Trade Agreement. Now, my second question is to the Minister of the Environment. Given that the provisions of the draft NAFTA agreement leaked to the public shows that transportation of large volumes of water between countries is a possibility, and that this government claims that they have a non-transportation of...
Order, please. It's gone on some length. Could we now have the question, please? Some more, please.
The question is, will this government change its verbal policy of no major water transportation to a legal, that is, legislation saying that this country does not intend to export water, or that Alberta does not intend to export water to the United States?
Wow. On this subject of water, the member is all wet. There is no intention whatsoever. There's nothing at all in the discussions. There's nothing in the discussions at all which would have Canada export water to the United States of America or to the or to Mexico unless it's bottled. And there are, of course, requests for further exports of water through tankers and that sort of thing that may be considered by provinces such as British Columbia or others, but the fact of the matter is that to bring out this old scarecrow again is just nonsense, and the honourable member should rely on something other than leaks.
Thank you. Before we deal with a number of items related to House business, might we revert to the introduction of special guests? Thank you. First Solicitor General, then Edmonton Calder.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to introduce to you and to the members of the Legislative Assembly 50 grade 5 and 6 students from the Killam School in my constituency. It's always good to see our youth here. It's kind of a breath of fresh air in this assembly after question period. But I would also like to introduce with them their teachers, Dennis Boutin and Gary Zettel, and their parents. And it's always good to see a great number of parents accompanying them: Mrs. James, Mrs. Clark, Mrs. Frederick, Mrs. Larson, Mrs. Herzog, Mrs. Linseth, Mrs. Cole, and Mrs. Monroe. They are seated in the members' gallery, and I would ask that they rise and receive the warm welcome of this assembly.
Edmonton Calder.
Speaker, I would like to once again introduce some students to you and to members of the Assembly from 38 students from St. Angela's School in the constituency of Edmonton Calder. They are accompanied by their teachers, Miss Donna Sages, Miss Anique Champagne, and parents Mrs. Lisa Deshane and Mr. Eric Bodner. They are seated in the public gallery, and I would ask that they rise and receive the warm welcome of the Assembly.
Vegreville.
Speaker, I too have some visitors to introduce to you and to members of the Assembly. 34 students from the Two Hills High School in the Vegreville constituency. They're seated in the public gallery accompanied by teachers Ms. Underhill and Mr. Ross, and parents Mrs. Saprovich, Mrs. Eagles, Mrs. Ivashko, and Mrs. Robinson. And I'd ask those students and their escorts to stand in the public gallery and receive a warm welcome.
Thank you. Point of order that arose today, Deputy Premier. Speaker, I rise on point of order relating to Standing Order 7-1 relating to question period. And the ruling of the chair, which has been traditional at the outset of the opening of this assembly and in previous assemblies, that relative to the conduct of question period. I've noticed with alarm and increasing concern the abuse of the privilege of asking questions on the part of the Leader of the Opposition, in at the end of his first series of questions, when the answer has been supplied, before proceeding on to the second question, he comments at length, as he did today, on the response to the second supplementary. Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is really quite a serious matter, because the question period is obviously one which is taken seriously by all members of the Assembly, by members of the government who are called upon to respond in their responsibilities as members of the Crown, and is also taken note of by the public through the advent of television. That has been commented on and I refer to Beauchesne 410 with respect to that particular aspect, where the Speaker of the House of Commons put forth some observations of the impact of television coming into the Assembly. And I think it's only fair that the Leader of the Opposition, having been given special privileges and special treatment in that he alone in this Assembly is entitled to ask the leading question, 2 supplementaries to that, and then the second question and 2 supplementaries to that. He alone is entitled to that. He is also entitled to Mr. Speaker, to assign his second question to a member of his caucus of his choice. Today we saw that occur, and we saw occur again at the end of the answer that I gave to a supplementary question, a lengthy statement by the Leader of the Opposition on the response that I gave.
Right.
That is unfair. That is an abuse.
That's abuse
of the question period.
Right.
And I object most strongly to that, Mr. Speaker, and I urge you to caution the Leader of the Opposition to stop abusing this Assembly in that manner.
And to grow up.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, it's not a point of order at all. And if he wants to talk about, Mr. Speaker, I allowed him to finish, and I would hope I'd have the courtesy here.
If they want to talk about question period being abused, it happens on all sides of the House, Mr. Speaker, and you may notice that a number of them wait to try to put their little comments in till the last question. And that's just as much of an abuse, Mr. Speaker, as anything he's talking about.
That's right.
So, Mr. Speaker, I think that the member was embarrassed in question period, and now he's trying to draw out a debate in here, Mr. Speaker. This is certainly not a point of order. I think it's silliness on the Deputy Premier's part, Mr. Speaker.
Here. In the last number of days, in fact, 2 days ago, I was visited by the leader of the House Leader for the Liberal Caucus with respect to question period, the length of questions and the length of answers. And as a follow-up to that discussion, I sent notes to the House Leader for the government as well as notes to the House Leader for the New Democratic Caucus, again expressing the concern that the House as a whole, that while we started out in this session with better use of questions and answers, that the questions were much shorter, they were much snappier, and a number of honorable members have indeed really put their minds to being much more concise in their line of questioning. And for the most part, on most days, that applies to the Liberal caucus. Well, order, please, order. Order, there may indeed be a second shoe to fall, you never know. And I know that other members of the House, from the government side and from the New Democratic Caucus, some of the members in particular, have worked very hard at trying to shorten the preambles, shorten the questions. And again, the Chair is appreciative of that. The Chair also has, from time to time, spoken to some of the cabinet ministers about trying to shorten or to speed up the answers that they give, and that, of course, is a very difficult thing because if you ask a question, if you take 30 seconds or 20 seconds to ask a question that doesn't necessarily follow, you can answer that question in 20 seconds. And of course, certain issues demand a little more time to occur. Also, it was raised that some of the questions for government-backed ventures to ministers might perhaps be then interpreted as ministerial statements. The Chair pointed out, and continues to point out now, that in the last couple of years, the encouragement was given by the Chair, because the Chair cannot direct the government to make more ministerial statements in the House, and that has indeed taken place. And that matter was raised to the government House Leader by note on Tuesday. And I'm quite hopeful that that continue to be the practice. Now, for all of us, it is indeed difficult to stand in this House to ask a question. It's difficult to stand in this House and answer a question, especially when the galleries are full, and especially when television is trained on us. And some of you, indeed, are very proficient in terms of, because of the background of your experience in the House, to be able to ask the question or to make the response. And sometimes the Chair allows more latitude to some members who don't get to stand that frequently in the House to be able to ask the question or to answer. Indeed, as pointed out on this particular aspect, that indeed it is the right of the Leader of the Opposition to get the first two main questions, and perhaps today, after having listened to this exchange in the House, that some careful consideration will be given to indeed following the format perhaps a bit more closely, and that on both sides of the House we might try not to twist each other's tail, to use an expression, in our last few comments, although I suppose that's a vain hope. But I hope that in all of this, that this might be helpful to the House, and that due care and attention will be given by honorable members to what is really going on in question period, the opportunity, which is very unique in the parliamentary process, which it does not occur in the American system, which does not occur in many of the foreign parliamentary systems, of being in a position to have daily accountability of the government. So I'm certain that all members will indeed come back to what question period is truly about. Thank you. The chair would like to deal with a matter which was raised at the tail end of last week. Play on words to go from twisting tail to having to deal with this particular matter. First, please have the galleries, they can proceed to clear in spite of me being standing. Thank you. On May the 11th, the Honourable Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services raised a matter of privilege in accordance with Standing Order 15 relating to comments made by the member for Westlock Sturgeon on Thursday, May the 7th, and again on Friday, May the 8th. The comments made by the member for Westlock Sturgeon alleged a certain conduct on the part of the minister with regard to the acceptance of employment applications on behalf of a private employer through the minister's constituency office in Barrhead. The minister objected strongly to the allegations as being untrue and filed with the Assembly a statutory declaration completed by a member of his staff to support his rejection of the version of events as presented by the member for Westlock Sturgeon. On May the 12th, the member for Westlock Sturgeon agreed to accept the minister's version of the events as true. The chair notes that Westlock Sturgeon correctly acknowledged that the word of other honourable members must be accepted, and the chair would remind members that this also places a strict duty on all members to ensure the veracity of their statements. In consideration of this ruling, the chair would like to again remind all honourable members of two specific sections of Beauchesne. The first, 409, subsection 7. I quote, "A question must adhere to the proprieties of the House in terms of inferences, imputing motives, or casting aspersions upon persons within the House or out of it." And again, Beauchesne 486, subsection 1, and this is a lengthy quote. "It is impossible to lay down any specific rules in regard to injurious reflections uttered in debate against particular members, or to declare beforehand what expressions are or are not contrary to order. Much depends upon the tone and manner and intention of the person speaking, sometimes upon the person to whom the words are addressed, as whether that person is a public officer or a private member not in office, or whether the words are meant to be applied to public conduct or to private character, and sometimes upon the degree of provocation which the member speaking had received from the person alluded to. And all these considerations must be attended to at the moment, as they are infinitely various and cannot possibly be foreseen in such a manner that precise rules can be adopted with respect to them." Close of quote. Again, Erskine May states on page 287, "Questions which seek an expression of an opinion or which contain arguments, expressions of opinion, inferences or imputations, unnecessary epithets or rhetorical, controversy, ironical or offensive expressions are not in order." And again in Erskine May on page 380, "Good temper and moderation are the characteristics of parliamentary language." And so again, honourable members, this is indeed a parliament. It is a place which is accorded proper respect. And those people that watch this place sometimes are a bit concerned as to how much respect some of our members on occasion happen to have for this place. Again, the chair underlines the fact that all honourable members have the compulsion, they have the duty upon themselves to be absolutely true of their facts before they make statements and allegations in this place. As there seems to be acceptance on the part of both members with regard to the minister's account of the facts as being accurate, the chair finds that no prima facie case of breach of privilege has taken place. Honourable member I don't think I would pat anybody on the back in this circumstance. Standing Order 40, request, Calgary Bow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the urgency of this motion, I believe it is very fitting that this Legislative Assembly show its support for Break the Cycle tour on the very day that it begins in St. John's, Newfoundland. This is a very special tour because it involves two Alberta women from Canmore, constituency of the Honourable Member from Banff Cochrane. Alison Lockwood and Terry Smith are both survivors of child sexual abuse. Beginning today, they will cycle across Canada to increase the awareness of the problem of child sexual abuse and to raise money for the National Break the Cycle Foundation. I know that the honourable members from Edmonton Avonmore and Edmonton Gold Bar agree that it is indeed fitting today to recognize these two courageous women on the very day that they begin their long journey across Canada. Thank you.
Standing Order 40, request, urgency, the matter proceed. Those in favor of allowing the matter to proceed, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried unanimously. Member for Calgary Bow, additional comments, speaking to the motion.
I'd like to ask the Honourable Minister of Labour to reply, please.
Recognize Minister of Labour. I don't know if this is who's who. The chair recognizes the Minister of Labour.
Thank you for the recognition. I believe the Honourable Member for Edmonton Gold Bar wishes to speak next, and I would like to speak following that.
Well, Honourable Member technically puts the chair in an interesting position. The chair has already recognized the Minister of Labour. Sorry.
I will speak in support of this motion. I'm sure everyone in this assembly knows the violence and abhors the violence that child sexual abuse is. It is a crime against children and, of course, a crime against all society. It attacks at the very roots of a child's trust. It attacks at the very roots of a child's love. It attacks at the very roots of a child's ability to reach out with generosity and build friendships with and respect for other people. The difficulty being, of course, that even though the child grows up to be a man or a woman, the roots so often remain stunted, the damage continues, the pain still throbs. And of course, if one person in our society suffers, then we all suffer. And therefore, it is a deep obligation of every one of us, not only in this House, but all across the country and in Alberta, to help prevent the violence, to help repair the roots, in fact, to help break the cycle. I very much support this motion.
Gold Bar.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of all members of the Liberal caucus to support this motion as well. Mr. Speaker, this project is designed to raise awareness across Canada of this very grave problem of sexual abuse, and we should thank the two brave women who are cycling across the country and the organizers in all provinces. Mr. Speaker, these are survivors, or are they? Survivors of child sexual abuse are alive, yes, but they often carry an immense burden, a burden and an emotional problems and anger. And so the tragedy may continue, as the Minister has suggested. Mr. Speaker, this is a subject that was barely acknowledged in our society 50 years ago, but now the numbers are revealed to be of epidemic proportions. Robin Badgley's study in Alberta estimated in 1984 that 1/2 of all Canadian women and 1/3 of Canadian men had been victims of sexual assault. 80% of the cases occurred when they were children. Further, Alberta Social Services has reported increases of about 41% each year of child sexual abuse between 1985 and 1988. Reports now number slightly more than 2,000 a year. Estimates are that 80% of prison inmates and 70% of teen prostitutes were abused as children. Those numbers come from the Edmonton Sexual Assault Center. The Causey study, in part of it, the Elizabeth Fry Society stated that over 90% of Native women in prison have been physically and/or sexually abused. A footnote in the Elizabeth Fry brief indicated that the 90% estimate may be low. Mr. Speaker, these numbers are frightening. They're terrifying. Mr. Speaker, these two women in this project called Breaking the Cycle are going to go across Canada. They will be here in Edmonton on August 21st and 22nd, and in Calgary on August the 23rd. They themselves are survivors. They're willing, with a great deal of courage, to share their grief, to help us all to understand the horror of child sexual abuse, and to strengthen our resolve to deal in an open manner with a very complex human problem in ways that go far beyond just punishing the offenders, but demand, in fact, require our concern and support for families, our understanding of the use of power and of human sexuality. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased that all caucuses have agreed that we in this House should support this event and this motion that's put before us today. I think it's very important, Mr. Speaker, that we convey to all Albertans and to all Canadians that members of this Assembly from all parts of the House deplore the tragedy of child sexual abuse and commend the efforts here to mobilize action to prevent it and to ease the pain. And for that reason, Mr. Speaker, I propose the following amendment to the motion. And further, that this motion be recognized to have the endorsement of the Government Caucus, the Official Opposition Caucus, and the Liberal Opposition Caucus. Here are copies. Mr. Speaker, I think this correctly reflects that all members of this House from all parties do deplore the tragedy of child sexual abuse and support this project.
The Chair is not prepared to accept the amendment as being in order. The reason being that when we have a resolution that says the Legislative Assembly, we are then speaking of all honourable members, no matter what their political stripe. And given the degree of concern, which I am assured from listening to various members, that this motion will probably carry unanimously, and therefore that carries the effect of being endorsed by all three political parties. Therefore, the Chair rules that the amendment is not in order. Edmonton Calder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the official opposition, and specifically the member from Edmonton Avonmore, who has worked with Alison Lockwood in organizing this particular event, I would like to thank the member from Calgary-Bow for bringing forward this motion on behalf of all three parties of this Assembly. We commend Alison Lockwood and Terry Smith of Canmore for their courage and commitment in bringing to the attention of all Canadians the tragedy of child sexual abuse. Two national studies have revealed that child sexual abuse is at epidemic levels with serious long-term repercussions for the victims and the survivors and their families. Mr. Speaker, we can no longer deny the suffering of so many Canadian children, and we must understand that child abuse occurs in our homes, in our streets, and in our communities, and that all children are at risk to abuse, not only by strangers, but more often by trusted adults in relationships of power and authority. I would urge, Mr. Speaker, that each of us make a commitment to take seriously allegations of child abuse, to break the conspiracy of silence, to advocate on behalf of children, to work and to ensure that services are available to child survivors and their families, and that each of us work very hard to prevent child abuse. Thank you.
Member for Highwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the interest of gender balance, I want to speak to this matter. It's a very serious matter. I don't think it's related to one gender or the other. There are some programs that are available in schools. I cite the CARE, C-A-R-E, program that deals with kindergarten to grade 2 and helps children to deal with potential abuse without frightening them of any kind of relationship with an adult. There's also another program, the elementary program for Quest, which in fact gives youngsters a strategy for dealing with unwanted experiences. And as a longtime teacher and school principal, teachers are often looked upon as someone who can hear a child tell of unwanted situations. I think it's a society thing that we need to discuss openly, so that we can get it out onto the table, so that we can see the devastation that is caused to far too many of our children. Therefore, I support this motion. Thank you.
Additional, Calgary Bow in summation.
Speaker, I'd like to thank all members of the Assembly for their support of this motion. We know that this is a very serious problem, one that is in all levels of society, and was indicated by the Honourable Minister of Labour, both male and female victims. It is a devastating effect on people's lives, and we know that it's a long time to recover and to heal. And I'd like to express my thanks to everyone for the support of this motion. These two young ladies from Canmore are undertaking a very courageous and a very long and lengthy trip to bring public awareness to this problem. And I'd like to think that we, by addressing this motion and supporting this motion, show them that we do understand and we do support their efforts. So I'd ask all the House to vote in favor of the motion. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify. Opposed, please signify. Carried. Let the record show it carried unanimously. Orders of the day.
Written questions.